So this is part of some armour that I'm trying to build at the minute, related to the Spanish Civil War SIG, and this is a Russian or Soviet BT5 tank, depicted in Republican colours, as it would have been in Spain. The Soviets supplied quite a number of these to the Republican side, along with the T-26 tank and the BA6 armoured car. Now I've depicted this going into the famous Battle of the Ebro, which is pretty much where the Republicans were pretty much finished off, certainly as far as the tanks and the ground forces took a bit of a battering. Quite a lot of these tanks were then captured by the nationalists and used to great effect against the very obsolete Panzer I. Now this is you might notice something a bit odd about this, it being a tank and there's no tracks, or whether there's no tracks around the wheels. And that was a bit of a unique feature to this type of chassis. I won't say this tank, because it's the Christie suspension, which is was designed by an American designer, abandoned by the US pretty much, and not really used by the UK. Although I think the Crusader tank had something a bit similar, but the Russians really used it to great effect, and it meant that the wheels were powered. So here, is quite often was the case on hard ground, the tracks would be whipped off, and they're meant to be stashed nicely along the side here, but that was never usually the case. They were pretty much chucked on the back, and then the tank could drive on its wheels, and it would utilise that again on hard ground. And then as soon as it got anywhere near going off onto off-road, it was pretty useless, so it did need the tracks. So I've depicted that because I thought that was a nice feature of this, and I'd sort of show it. And I've actually modelled this on a particular picture which looked very much like this, even down to the fact that the stone is stuck in there between the wheels. I don't know if you can see that just here. That's what that white fleck is. That's a piece of rubble shoved in there. So this is the Zvezda kit, which was reboxed by Italeri. So it's a pretty old kit, I think certainly early 90s, if not a little bit older. I have upgraded it quite a bit, and I'll show you a few pictures now whilst I'm talking of some of the additions I gave it. So I used a ABBA etch set, which gave a full etch metal grille at the back, which is quite a prominent feature. The kit part is moulded solid, so it did stand out a little bit. We've also got some etch metal rails going down along the side of the fenders, which replaced the quite thick kit parts, so they were just cut off and glued on the side. And we've also got the latches running down along the side of the fenders, which were used to tie in the tracks. I replaced the spades with photo etch metal spades as well when I've shoved them in along the side, and there was also a few parts on the rear deck that was made out of etch metal. I replaced all the handles on the hatches with metal wire and bent it to shape, drilled the end of the gun barrel out, and also made new front fenders because the kit parts didn't really have the right shape. They didn't sit as they should on the front axle. And that was pretty much it. It's quite basic stuff. I also took off the kit hinges and replaced them with photo etch metal parts. And then I did go over the whole chassis and turret and all of the flat surfaces, and stippled with Mr. Surfacer 1200 to give the cast texture look, because the plastic didn't really have much of that showing, and it was quite a prominent feature of these Russian tanks. They weren't really. It wasn't like rolling out a sports car. You know, it's pretty much a machine to do a job, so we didn't really care what the finish was like, and they were quite rough in some cases. I had to modify some of the wheels because they didn't quite sit right off of the tracks, and I also used a set of individual track links, but this is the contentious part, they are actually for a BT7. Now if you're really dialing into the detail, these probably aren't the right tracks for this tank. Now BT5s did have those tracks, but I would be very surprised if any of the BT5s in Spain had these later tracks. They were 1937 model tracks, but I think it's a long shot to hope for that. However, on my part, it was a bit of a sellout. The tracks, I got them half price from a model shop. They were about £5, and the kit tracks were going to take a lot of work to make them be able to be displayed the way I have. So I sort of took the best of both worlds. I didn't want to spend 20 quid on a set of metal tracks, so that's how I came up with these. So they're much better detailed tracks, it must be said. However, they are the wrong type. The tracks in the kit are actually quite good. They're a pleasant surprise for a kit of this age. They're not vinyl tracks. They are actually linker length tracks, and they do quite a good job at that, to be honest. So if you were going to do a run around the wheels, you'd probably be fine with those. So I think that's probably all there is to say on this, so I'll leave you now with a few photos, and hope you enjoy what you see.